Welcome to the Freedom Club podcast, where we discover the fight for freedom, fulfillment, passion, and purpose. Your host is Curt Gallup certified strengths coach, an agency founder who is dedicated to coaching individuals seeking to level up their life and their businesses. The Freedom Club is about unlocking your talents, turning them into strengths, and crushing your objectives. You can learn more at curtmercadante.com. Welcome to the Freedom Club.
This is the Freedom Club podcast. I'm your host, Curt Mercadante. It is Thursday, May 10th, which means it's time for our Thursday interview segment. Every Thursday, of course, I interview a business leader or some other all-around interesting person. Every Monday is the Monday Motivator segment, in which I bring you a short burst of motivation to help you kick your week off on the right foot. And for today's Thursday interview segment, we're going to turn the tables. And I feature an interview that I did with Ava Wettrick, host of the popular Mentorz podcast. Ava is a 17-year-old innovation student from Noblesville, Indiana. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Ava as much as I enjoyed giving it. Here is my interview with Ava Wettrick of the Mentorz podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Mentorz. Today we have on Curt Mercadante on. Curt, thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thanks for having me. Absolutely.
Yeah, so where I wanted to start first was your story. So telling the audience a little bit about, where you came from, how you started out, and then, where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up wanting, ever since I was probably 10 years old, I wanted to own my own business. And because of that, I was always very impatient. I hated school. I went to college. I hated college. A friend of mine, my roommate at the time, we figured out kind of jokingly, but it was actually serious, that over the course of 4 years, I think I attended about 19% of my classes. But I worked a lot. I had internships. I worked for a U.S. senator. One of my professors had a public opinion research company. And so that's where I got the most benefit from my education, was actually working. I had internships in DC, New York. So when I got out, I was ready for the actual workforce. And so I worked in public relations, corporate public relations for years, political campaigns. And in 04, 05, I started a public relations and ad agency that I had up until last year. And about 5 years into it, I had this feeling that of overwhelm and frustration. And I got frustrated with my clients. I wanted to give it all up. And, my wife and kids I didn't see them enough. I would work all day at a home office. I would go up into the office. I'd come down for dinner. I'd go up into my home office and disappear till 4 a.m. I'd come out, get at 6:30 and do it all over again. And so I had built a prison instead of a business. And so I did some things, built a program to get out of that. And I was able to truly scale up my business. There's a difference between scaling a business and growing it. Scaling it is when you do it in alignment with the other two facets of your life. So there's work, family, and self. There's no such thing as, people talk about work-life balance. There's no such thing. And so I was able to scale it up. But even then, I had this feeling that at the end of the day, I wasn't doing what I was put on this earth to do. And I felt guilty because of that. I'm like, well, I got this successful business. I'm making great money. But there's still something missing. And so I started unofficially coaching some of my clients and some other people according to the program that I had used to scale up my business. And at the end of the days when I would coach, I had the feeling, yes, now that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. So I decided to shut down my PR and ad agency, gave up some great revenue, scariest thing I've ever done, but the most rewarding. And so I haven't looked back, and I'm having the most fun now. It's the most fulfilling. When I get messages from people who watch my videos on LinkedIn and say, thank you for helping me, I really needed to hear that today. It just makes my day.
No, that's honestly incredible. And so for a little bit on the background side, you talked about internships, and my school, I'm blessed with an amazing school that has a huge internship network that allows to allow seniors to go, hey, we have internships all across the board. What do you want to do? But, as a kid who probably didn't have access to that, how are you able to find internships?
So, even taking a step back further from that, and as an example, I had a guy, he's in college at Ohio State, and he messaged me last week, and he said he was in the marketing area, but he had this dream. He said, listen, I'm considering some internships, but I really have this business idea that I want to start. And he said, what do you recommend? And I said, well, what's your business idea? And it had to do with creating videos with farmers that he would put in certain restaurants to create awareness of the farm to table and where your food
Oh,
comes from. And
wow.
I thought it was excellent. And I said, well,
Yeah.
why in the world do you want an internship? He wanted to intern with like a PR agency or something. I said, if you want to do that, go and start making videos. I'll hook you
Yeah.
up with video creators. Don't do it. And he said, well, because that's what my professor, that's what people told me. And I think that's the problem. A problem that we have in society is that from the, when we come out of the womb, we have a sense of discovery and a sense of wonder and exploration, even if it's just discovering the world by our parents' feet or out on the back deck. And somewhere along the line, it's starting as early as preschool, it gets squeezed out of us. And some folks, someone just told me that there was, I don't know where it was at, but there was a preschool that canceled they had like a theater program for preschoolers. They canceled it because it wasn't perfect. They wanted to put kids on a track for college, and the theater wasn't doing that in preschool. And so you start this coerced conformity and standardization that starts then, and where you have to master all 8 subjects, no matter what you're passionate in, no matter what you're strong in. And so I say that's like telling Usain Bolt, listen, your 100-meter time is really great, but you're horrible at the mile. So you're not allowed to run the 100 meters anymore. All you're going to do is run the mile. It's insane. We would think it's
Yeah.
insane there. So by the time kids get to 16 or 17, Dr. Peter Gray in his book, Free to Learn, talks about there's a problem with depression and kids 16 to 17 having a feeling of loss of control over their life because everything has been structured since they were a baby. And so they don't know how to make a choice. They don't know how to follow their passion. So when you talk about internships, once you get to that point, it's wonderful that in high school and in school, there's certain schools that are looking at what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? But there's certain people that they get to that point and they choose an internship based on what someone tells them they should do, what their parent tells them they should do, and things like that. I was lucky enough, my parents from the time I was little let me explore whatever I wanted to explore. They sent me to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama. They let me do those things. And so I went through an astronaut phase. I wanted to be an economist. I wanted to do all this stuff. They let me explore that until I determined what I wanted to do. And so finding the internships, I was instilled with that sense of, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. It started with my parents. And so I determined what I wanted to do, a clear path, and found internships that fit my purpose at the time.
But like, you had that from your parents, and so did I.
Right.
I was the first kid, so I kind of watched my, especially my mom and my dad flourish into, my dad has, he has a book, he has his own podcast, he's a teacher, he's a father figure to a lot of other kids. He's a public speaker. He now has, he has his own business. He has a lot of things going on. And through him flourishing, he was kind of like, Ava, do what you want now, because I understand the world. And then my mom started to, build up. She was a little afraid, but, she's like, well, I'm in nursing. I see problems with a lot of girls because I'm an OBGYN. I think they need a comforting place. I want to start a clinic. I want to have my own clinic. And, through that, my mom's like, Ava, do what you want, because honestly, there's so much there. You and I were blessed to have those parents with exploring.
Right.
But then how do people that are forced to have that structure, how do you think that they could break the mold? Because it's hard to think for yourself. It's hard to, it's painful to try to discover yourself.
I think that the entire system, and when I say system, I don't just mean the educational system. I think society we need to start over. And I think we've gone, listen, this is not a political statement, but Hillary Clinton had a book called It Takes a Village. And listen, I believe in community. I believe in helping your fellow humans. Yeah. But with all due respect, I think it takes a family and it takes a home. Oh, yeah. And it starts at the home. And if you can't, we live in an age when in many homes, 2 parents have to work just to make ends meet. Heck, just to pay taxes these days, right? Mm-hmm. And so over and over, and I think there's been a growth in over the decades in that people are just outsourcing raising of their kids to soccer coaches, and I've seen this as a soccer coach, that these parents just drop them off, and they're outsourcing it to schools. Yeah. And I don't care if you're on the left side of the spectrum or the right side of the spectrum, but if you're not raising your kid, we raise our kids a certain way, and someone said, you're brainwashing your kids. I said, you're darn right I am. They're my kids. When they get to be 18, they can do it. But if you and when I say brainwashing, raising them with a certain set of values that you have and acting like you give a darn about how your kids are going to turn up. There are parents, and I see them all the time. I see people who come to me who are 40 years old, who didn't have parents who did this, to take an interest in what they do, to question what's going on at their schools, to question what doctors are telling them, to question everything.
Yeah.
And we've learned to outsource our thought, outsource our values to teachers, to doctors, to, professors, to whoever. And we've stopped thinking for ourselves, thinking for our families and raising our families. And I think it's to the detriment of the future of our society, really.
No, I totally agree. Like I read or listened to like a short little article, and it basically talked about, when family systems started to collapse. And again, there's multiple reasons for it. Like it could either be working, or it could be like, mom's not going to be a mom anymore, by the way. We're out. Or like the dad's like, bye, I'm going to take off. Your mom, we're going to do whatever we want. Try to raise yourselves. This happened a lot in society. So like you'd end up with mom and dad, like dad having two other moms, maybe a third person, maybe that's a mom, I don't know. And then mom would just kind of fleet around, do whatever she wanted. Society started to collapse because, no, they didn't have structure. They didn't have a unit, and you didn't raise anyone with those beautiful, again, it doesn't matter where you are on politically, but with fundamental values and morals and structure. And it all goes to crap. Like one of the questions I wanted to ask you later on was like, especially because who you are today and everything you've learned and done, like, how do you raise your own kids?
Right. Yeah. So we homeschool our kids, and we do that just because we feel it's right for us. We like to listen. I'm very entrepreneurial. There's people who homeschool, and homeschool has become more, I hate the term mainstream, but there are different people who homeschool for different reasons. There are people who homeschool for social reasons, for religious reasons, for political reasons, for a variety of reasons. We don't do it for religious reasons. We're very, I hate the term religious, but we're Catholic. We are very, we go to church every Sunday. We raise our kids with those values. Mm-hmm. But really, if you have to get down to it, we have a very entrepreneurial style. We do a lot of self-directed education. Some people would call it unschooling. We're not quite unschooling, but it's very entrepreneurial. It's strengths-based. I'm a strengths coach. And so we apply that to the education of our children. We're not what some people call helicopter parents, where don't climb that tree, don't do this, don't do that. We let them explore. We let them fail. They're in boxing class, learn to take a punch. And that's not just about boxing class. That's in life. The amount of younger people, when I say younger people, I'm 42, so people younger than me, right? Mm-hmm. That watch Gary Vaynerchuk. And, I love his message. I love his message. Well, at its core, his message is suck it up, take a punch, take a loss, keep moving. And they nod their heads and they clap and they clap. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they get a mean comment on social media and they disappear for a week and they can't go on with their life. And it's like, you know what? If that's the biggest adversity, and I shared a video with you about my grandfather, who had real adversity. People have to learn some adversity. And when you don't have, there's a guy named Toph Evans. He is, he almost committed suicide about 5 years ago, depression, hard drugs. And he lives in an area called, they call it Paradise. It's the Gold Coast of Australia. And he said there's so much money there that these kids and people his age, he's in his mid-20s now, they grow up without any sense of adversity, any pressure on them. Mm. And, when you apply pressure to coal, what happens? You get a diamond, right?
Yeah, yeah.
These kids have everything, and the rates of depression and mental health issues are huge because there isn't that sense of adversity. And so that's what happens when you have decades of prosperity, right? And it worries me because I see some things that are happening, and I maybe I sound like an old man when I say that, but it's the same people who watch Gary Vee and are like, yes, yes. And then they turn around and don't live that way. 2/3 of millennials, Washington Post just came out, don't know what Auschwitz is. And Auschwitz, it's alarming to me that if we don't understand our history and understand what real adversity is, or worse yet, Someone told me that other people got offended when he posted a picture online of dead American soldiers on the beach at Normandy. And they got offended by that. When that's what's happening, there's a problem.
Oh, right now is the age of how can I be offended?
Right.
How can someone tell me that it's not my fault? And I think as a coach, because I haven't dug too much into your coaching style, but I'm gonna guess one of your coaching things is, no, it is your fault, and you need to face that.
People need to understand risk, failure, dusting themselves off, getting back in the game, or getting in the game to begin with. There was a client that I had, and we parted ways because she wasn't doing the work. And I knew that she had pockets of time to do the work because I gave her those. I said, let's cancel our coaching session night so you have time to work on the activity. How can I help you create time? She sent me a 9-paragraph email saying, one of the things she said is, I don't know anyone as busy as me, maybe Elon Musk, and put it off on excuses. And like you said, there are people who look, gosh, you just talked about the family unit and the importance of having a family unit. You can't even talk about that these days. There's hard economic statistics that show families that have a father who's there, and actually not just a biological father, but someone who's there as a father. The kids are less likely to suffer from alcoholism, depression, more likely to be, economically stable. You can't even say that anymore, because then by saying that, suddenly you're saying that single moms are bad. No, you're not saying that. You're stating a fact. And so you're absolutely right that we're in the age where everything is offensive. We're in a victim society, and I see it every day with people who come to me, and and the videos I make are in response to the people who come to me and say they have every excuse in the world that they can't do it. And in my video today, I said, I think of my grandfather, and you don't know what adversity is.
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh my gosh. I mean, especially adversity like that. Cause I listened to the story, and it's like, especially like that, he didn't know the things he was going to get into until he did it, adversity like that. And I mean, I'm from Indiana. Do you know Eva Kor?
Sounds familiar.
You brought up Auschwitz too. And so she wrote, Surviving the Angel of Death. I think she wrote another book. She was one of the experimental twins. She was in Auschwitz, and she's like, to this day, I still don't know what they put in my veins, but they did. And she's like, I survived that as a young girl. My sister died. And she's like, but I survived, that's, you talked about Auschwitz, like that's adversity. That's something crazy. And again, if you don't have those stories, then I don't know what we're doing. So like, how do you open these people's eyes? Because especially as a coach, because, people come to you with the victim mindsets. How do you propose to them that like, you have to find a different mindset?
So with potential clients, or with my clients, they have to be ready. I talk about Gary Vee a lot because he makes a ton of sense, right?
Yeah. He's a cool guy.
Selling, your job is not to convert everyone. It's not to sell the unsellable. And there are people who come to me, and within the first 5 minutes, I can tell if they're ready or not. And so they have to be ready. And so there are people who if they keep making excuses, they haven't felt enough pain. And there's nothing I can do to convince them to jump into my program until they have felt that pain. Most of my clients are 45 and above because they've tried stuff. When you're in your 20s or 30s, a couple things. You think you have all the time in the world. And so the notion that time is a non-renewable resource, you just don't believe it.
Yeah.
And then as you get older, things happen. Parents pass away. You get around 40, 45, and you start to see 60 around the window. Your kids are getting older, and you realize, wow, what am I doing? I got to get. And so when I talk to people in their 30s, they're like, no, I'm not paying that. There's enough time left. I'm not going to do that. And so if you're not ready, you're not ready. And I'm not going to force you into it. I'm not going to try and convince you, listen, I have a great sales pitch. Come on in. But the clients who come in have felt that pain. Some are skeptical, but you work with them in a very systematic approach. We start with unlocking your superpowers, I call them. They're actually your strengths, and everyone has untapped superpowers. To find what your naturally occurring patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that when you work in them and invest in them, you're in your strength zone, your superpower zone, things start coming easier to you. And after several weeks, my clients start to have this aha moment and they're like, oh my gosh. And we work toward your vision and your purpose. You're like, wow, now I'm understanding what I was meant to do and put on this earth to do. And so my hope is that they'll go with their kids and other people and try to raise them the same way.
Yeah.
But on an kind of aside from coaching, I grew up wanting to, ever since in high school, I wanted to change the world and save the world. And I thought the best way to do it was in politics.
Mm.
And the thing about politics is this, and I'm jaded because I've seen a lot of things over the years, worked in DC, I worked in Chicago politics. Politics isn't about saving the world. It's about saving the politicians. And I decided that, and Isaac Morehouse, who founded Praxis, was in politics too. And we kind of had a similar realization that I'm going to decide to save the world one person at a time. I'm going to do it with my family, and I'm going to do it with my clients, and I'm going to do it through my videos. When people email me, when they see my videos and they say I've helped them. And if I can do that, then I'm fulfilling my mission every day versus I'm going to try and fight the armies of society with, on my own. It's just not going to work. And so there are a lot of people whose idea of trying to save the world or get involved is sharing a motivational meme on Facebook or commenting, I hate Trump, I hate Obama, I hate this, I hate that. And they won't raise a finger to do anything within their own family, within their community. They've never volunteered for something in their town.
Yeah.
And I share that message as much as I can, and people get offended. And frankly, I don't care if they get offended. It's true, So I like to think small in order to have big impact. My family, my community, my town, and people don't want to do that anymore.
I mean, I've seen like the moonshot in your message, you call it like a free and fulfilled world, right, where everyone like I think that a free and fulfilled world would be beautiful if everyone, knew a purpose, had we're driven. And we talked about family structures. There was a structure of the family. The kids were raised to the best of the parents' ability, and the kids even went out and learned their own things. And they weren't, of course, you're always going to have a societal structure, but at least the structure could be good this time. There's so many crazy cool things that you could do, especially with because another one of the things I wanted to get into was you're talking about your clients. What is one of your really amazing client success stories?
Yeah. So one thing, she comes to mind, she just wrote me an incredible testimonial on LinkedIn. She lives in Midland, Texas. She's in her 60s. And when she came to me, I had done a video talking about how my dad at age 55, he had been president, CEO of large corporations, Fortune 500 companies. And in the mid 80s, he found himself out of work in his mid 50s, which is not a good recipe. When you get past your 50s, people don't want to hire you. And so he was unemployed for maybe 2 years. It was tough on us as a family. I was 9 years old, so I didn't know what was going on, but I remember it now. My dad got a job delivering newspapers, and he would get me up at 4 a.m. and we'd go and deliver newspapers. But he reinvented himself as he was a mechanical engineer by trade, but he reinvented himself as a management consultant and went on to have another 20 years of career designing airliners and design, all this stuff. She saw that and said, I'm in my 60s. Can I reinvent myself? And I said, yeah, whether you have 1 day left on this earth or 40 years, why would you want to live one more millisecond without freedom and fulfillment? So we entered this program and she says, her biggest challenge was getting up in the morning when we first met.
Wow.
And now she said she's excited for every single week. And her vision is to crush whatever obstacles are in her way using her strengths. She's painting now. She loves color, and she's always loved color. And so she started painting. I said, here's some links in your town. Take some art classes. She started taking art classes. She's actually selling. This was in January. It's April now. She's selling artwork. And so she has found that freedom and fulfillment, and she's reinvented and recalibrated herself. And it's really amazing.
No, that's incredible, especially in that short amount of time.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
drive. And it must be like such a powerful but humbling thing to be able to change someone's life that dramatically in such a positive way too.
It feels wonderful. And it because it's fulfilling my mission. But the key is there's accountability. And when we're conditioned to set false limits, and when we set these big audacious objectives, they'll come back and say, well, I can do 10% more by the end of the year. Why can't you do 20? Well, because of this, that, and the other thing. All right, well, let's blow this, that, and the other thing. Let's break it down.
Yeah.
And shoot holes in it. Okay, I could do 20. All right, why can't you do 30%? And that's not just work. It's not just income. It's every facet of your life. And people realize, yeah, wow, that's right. You're right.
Oh yeah. That's one of the big things for the innovation class. It's because like there's this it's never going to happen date of you're going to graduate and leave. And so kind of the part of the innovation class is that, you're 16, 17, 18, and you're in high school. You're adorable. You're adorable. The world will love you right now because you're doing something right now. When you get out of high school and you become 19 or 20, people aren't going to care. You're going to be like, just like everyone else, and what's going to happen then? And kids go, oh my gosh. And so like, everyone, especially at the end of the year right now, everyone's just trying to book it, and get everything as fast as possible.
Yeah. And you said something about be like someone else. I think that is such a, I call it coerced conformity, about everyone's got to march in the same line. You have to do the same thing. And then that's when you get into the whole thing of, well, why are you majoring in finance? Well, because my 5 friends did. My dad said I should do it. And you have to stand out, and you have to stick up for yourself, and being different is great. And in our society, sometimes we pay lip service to that. But I literally grew my beard out 2 years ago and shaved my head because people thought I shouldn't do that. And if you tell me I shouldn't do something, I'm going to go do it. And because it's be different. Don't be afraid. Tom Bilyeu has a phrase called unplugged from the matrix. Yep. And it's wonderful because when you finally unplug, it's like, oh my gosh, everyone else, what are you doing? You want to slap them in the face and say, unplug. So
it's like, because at that point you have to, like, if you look at, like, I have this conversation with some people all the time, like AI, it's here. Right. Sooner or later, like, you're already starting to see it within the checkout aisles, and then with, driverless cars and things like that. And people are like, well, I'm safe. Can your job be automated? And the people that are going to continue to basically survive, because this is survival of the fittest, are the doers and are the creators and are the thinkers. They're the people who can make things better. They're people that can change other people. Right? Like, if you're, no offense, but like I'm going to be working at a fitness desk the next week because I have a new job. I just started.
Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you. But that's going to be automated someday. And I'm fully aware of that. But, I'm going to take advantage now. I'm going to have fun with it. But, if that's your job, if that's your commitment, that's not good. No one's setting themselves up well.
No, exactly. And when you talk about that, the economy of tomorrow, the society of tomorrow, we're prepping people for that with the educational system and the prep of 40 years ago and 50 years ago, maybe 100 years ago. Our current educational system is actually based on the Prussian model that was very militaristic or geared toward forcing everyone to do certain things. And in our entrepreneurial society, where people aren't working for 40 years for the same employer anymore. Some people are, but most people are not. We got to get stuff in gear, or we're not going to be prepared for what's coming. So.
Oh yeah. And I totally agree. And I wanted to pivot one more direction because we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you, how'd you get so good at LinkedIn? Like, oh my gosh. Cause there's been so much going on because I took up 2 sports and then like this job and then everything. And so like I got to researching you yesterday and today. And I was like, I didn't know what I got into. I was like, scrolling through stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy is this, oh my gosh. And cause Quentin Allum's just kind of like, I like to consider him he's such a cool kid. And I really enjoy But and so immediately he's like, this guy, talk to this guy. And then I was like, oh, okay, Quentin. But then I started digging and I was like, oh my goodness. So how'd you do it? And then how'd you build such a good personal brand?
Quentin helps me out. I think I just started with really trying to be myself and who I am, and focus on, there's some people who are like, all right, I got to be a marketer. So I got to be Gary Vee. I got to be Tom Bilyeu. I got to be Lewis Howes. It's like, no, be yourself,
Yeah.
And so I started with that. I started with my purpose, my vision, my why of what I want to do. And you can't watch a single video without, someone actually just told me this today. You can't watch a single one of my videos without knowing what my why is. And then I coupled that with fun things like my logo, which is my bald head, my glasses, and my beard. I redid everything that way. And it just has kind of exploded. And I want to do videos that I get pumped up and motivated from making.
Yeah.
And so I just do that. And if people don't like it, well, that's fine. I don't care. I have a superhero theme. If you don't like that, you think that's childish, too bad. I don't care. I love Justice League. I love Avengers. All right. Who cares? That's me. So, yeah.
That is the way to do it. I think for like some people, because even me sometimes it's a little difficult to, really show yourself out on the internet, especially like with LinkedIn, when it's supposed to be like, professional. But I think when you start to be able to do that and you gradually work yourself into it, then it gets fun.
Absolutely. And you can't get too caught up in the numbers. You can't get too caught up. Listen, I have people all the time, people call them trolls, who come in and say mean things to me. And I know people who will have mean things said to them and they're like, sorry, I'm taking a break from LinkedIn. I might give it all up. I can't do it anymore. And I was raised with I have a certain philosophy about bullies because I was very overweight as a child and I used to get bullied incessantly. And the way I ended that was bloody noses for the bullies. And what I've always discovered is that when a bully gets punched in the nose, figuratively or verbally, they don't bully you anymore because you now have power.
Yeah.
And so what I tell people is, listen, if a troll came up to you on the street and said that same thing to you, what would you do? Now, some people would start crying and run away. I would tell that troll to, it's a family-friendly show, but I would say a certain thing to them. And if it escalated, that's why I teach my kids boxing, because if you have the power, then you're more confident in yourself. And it's not about fighting. It's not about all that. But if you feel that you have power, if you feel that you know where you're going and you have confidence, then it's easier to find your vision. It's easier to find your purpose. That comes out in everything you do, including storytelling, including videos, including what you do. And that projecting that confidence is so vital in everything we do. And I think that needs to be taught more.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Especially power can come from anywhere, honestly. Like, I mean, I know for a fact, like neurologically, males have twice as many serotonin receptors as females. So if one guy like applauds another guy, like, hey, you're doing great. That guy, he's like, awesome, man. I'm going to keep going for months on end. I'm going to work hard. And that's typical. It's very typical. And that's why, a lot of men are in the business field, because it takes a lot of that. And then, women, on the other hand, they need to be loved more. They need to be comforted more, because, we don't have as many serotonin receptors. We need a little more foundation, a little more support to be able to grow. And then, so from confidence, from like love, from doing things, from understanding, like what you said, who you are, having a rooted area, you're going to be so much better off in life. So you're like, thank you. I didn't even think about that. I didn't think about that thing.
And you don't have to, and we've talked about people who get offended in our society. You can empower women without demeaning men. You can empower men. You could talk about male empowerment. And some people, well, you can't talk about male empowerment without demeaning women. And we can just talk about human empowerment, because I think a problem in the society is we have this scarcity mindset that if you're for something, you must be against something.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, why can't I just want everyone to succeed without, pointing out Jordy B. Peterson, which he has a book, 12 Rules. And he talks about a decrease in men going to university, increase in alcoholism, depression amongst men, joblessness. And people attack him for just merely sharing those statistics. And it's like,
Yeah.
he's not demeaning women. He's just talking about a real problem. And yes,
Yeah.
there's some employment issues with women and glass ceiling and all that. Let's empower everyone, but let's focus on be who you are. You don't have to mimic someone else. Richard
Yeah.
Branson is Richard Branson. Gary Vee's Gary Vee. Mark Cuban's Mark Cuban. They're all individual. They all have their individual superpowers that made them who they are. Discover what your superpowers are, invest in them, be yourself, be confident in who you are, find your purpose, and that will lead you to a life of freedom and fulfillment.
You blew me away. I'm sorry. Just oof. That is, and also that's such a great note to end on. Where can everyone find you?
Curt, well, it's a long name. Curt Mercadante. It's spelled kind of like it sounds, although I've misspelled it before. Or search for Curt Coach on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active, and you will find me most times of the day.
Wonderful. And once again, thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.